Kramer, Millionaire Maker, and we have Steve Moore, our economist extraordinaire. He is the voice everyone turns to, and we need a voice today because the deficit is going to be outrageous and we are all going to pay a price. Steve, what do you think about President Biden's proposal and the impact on the United States of America and our wallets?
Well, I almost fell off my chair when I heard it announced on Friday morning that it was going to be a $6 trillion budget. And by the way, over the next decade, this raises the debt amount, the amount of red ink coming out of Washington, by about $7.5 trillion. That's over the amount we were already expected to borrow. So these are huge numbers, $22 trillion of new debt over the next decade. I mean, these numbers are so gigantic. I'm almost aghast at how much our country has gone off a fiscal cliff here. And, when I first came to Washington in 1984, we passed the first $1 trillion budget. That was under Ronald Reagan. Here we are, 35 years later, and the budget isn't $1 trillion, it's $6 trillion. And we can't afford this. I think it'll be financially ruinous if we go down that course, even with the massive tax increase that Biden wants to pay for it, the increase in capital gains tax and death taxes and corporate taxes and small business taxes. It still doesn't cover we still aren't paying our bills. And I think I'll say one last thing, Hillary, I think it is abusive to our kids and grandkids that we would massively borrow like this, and just, our kids would be, put right in the lap. They're $150,000 per person cost of the debt. We just can't do this. It has to be stopped. And I don't understand how anyone can believe through this idea of modern monetary theory that we can just borrow and borrow forever and it's not going to have negative consequences. I think it will.
Absolutely. Now, since I am syndicated and I am in all 50 states, I think it's important that we talk about this imbalance that's taking place around the country. Okay, I'm based in New York. I'm a New York City resident, and I'm also in New Jersey. So we have this mass exodus, two mass exoduses that I can speak of. And one is the mass exodus out of New York City. Yes, it has to do with COVID, but now everyone has adopted the Zoom virtual working paradigm. But as people have left and crime has increased because of the way our police department is forced to deal with those potential criminals and criminals out there, it's become very dangerous. So it's like feeding upon itself. Now let's talk about another exodus. The exodus out of New Jersey, where the taxes don't even compare to the taxes, city and state, that I pay in New York, but New Jersey seems to be moving to Florida. I would say I know at least a dozen people, and these are not retired people, that are just picking up and going to Florida. Therefore, whoever's left in New Jersey is going to be paying much higher taxes. Whoever's left in New York City is going to have the brunt of the taxes, especially as you have companies that are picking up and moving. Goldman Sachs, maybe it's just a rumor that they're going to Florida, but this is really significant. What do you think happens as an economist, and for everyone listening who has to be experiencing this on one way or another? What is your opinion of what's going on and what this will do to us?
How about the man of the week, Phil Mickelson, who won the PGA at the age of 50, and that's all anybody's been talking about. Well, he lives in California, and he's saying, well, I might have to leave out California, another high tax state, and move to Florida. So it is happening every day with people in financial markets, celebrities, people of wealth are clearly moving out of some of these very high tax districts. I do a report, Hillary, every year with my friends at ALEC, which is a state legislative group. We call it Rich States, Poor States. And we look at which states have the best, economic environment, and where we think, that they're going to see real growth, and which states have the worst economic environment. And Hillary, can you guess which state we rank number 50?
For the worst economic environment, California or New York?
New York is, unfortunately, and New Jersey is 49, and my home state of Illinois is 48, and California is 47. These states just got very high taxes, a lot of regulation, a lot of things that are driving people out. And I call it the blue state meltdown. And it has to stop because, I'll give you one statistic that just came out this week from the Census Bureau. New York City, by the latest estimates, lost another 90,000 people this last year. And I think that might actually be an underestimate. We will see whether people will come back to New York. I wouldn't want to own a big, apartment building in New York right now because so many people have left. And it comes down to three things. Taxes are high in New York. You now have the highest taxes in the country in New York with the new 15% income tax. Number two, the schools are a problem. They're just not performing. And number three is what you mentioned, the crime. The crime is leaving people too. So if these cities could correct those problems, I think people would come back. But it's going to be a long road back for San Francisco, for Los Angeles, for New York, for Chicago, and Philadelphia.
That's right. And then the infrastructure starts to crack and really deteriorate, even though we have a whole infrastructure bill that's coming along that looks like it'll pass at slightly under $1 trillion. It's not going to be building up or helping these cities that are having this mass exodus. This is serious. This is a serious issue, major problem. I have always paid my taxes proudly. And my really key young earning years when real estate was dirt cheap in New York City, I was paying 51% of my salary, probably for a decade. And it took me a lot longer to get where I wanted to be because of that 51%. Especially when you think about the power of compounding. And I really feel bad for those that are going to try to make it because it's so impossible. Personally, I think that we have a situation, it's not like 1972 New York bankruptcy and it's all going to turn around. This is a complete, this is Nesbitt's mega trends from the 1980s saying one day we'll all be working from Colorado Springs or Boulder, Colorado, or wherever we want to be working from. But still, I think the situation with crime is really the most serious. So I just feel really bad about that. Now, can we talk about what's going on with inflation? Because it's real. I have talked about how I wanted to put a basketball court in my backyard. It was supposed to be $7,000 for the cement, and now to put a full court, it's $30,000 just in cement, and nobody wants to do just a $30,000 job. Okay, no one. You can't even find it, which is one of the reasons I like Cemex, CX, $8 stock, Mexican cement company. I know the family, amazing, that the major shareholder, but that's an aside. I just can't help throwing that one out there. But what is happening with inflation, and can the fact that wage inflation is taking place help at least counteract it?
Inflation is the big issue of debate right now. It is, you're right, Hillary, it is with us. We're seeing it right now in gas prices and food prices and lumber prices and construction prices. It's hard to see things that aren't rising dramatic. Airlines. Yeah, I don't know if you've tried to make an airline ticket, buy an airline ticket lately, but they've been going up 20 or 30% as well. And so this is a result, in my opinion, of the old, what's the definition of inflation? Too many dollars chasing too few goods. We have the Fed just, pouring trillions of dollars into the economy. We have the federal government now promising to borrow trillions and trillions of dollars more. That has to have an effect. And I think what we're doing is now seeing that in prices. And, we're all praying that Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, is right and that this is temporary. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure. And one of the worst things we could do right now, given the high inflation that we're already seeing, would be to add another $2 trillion of debt this year. I mean, I think Congress needs to stop spending, pay your bills, be fiscally responsible. And, then I think we can get control of this. Because look, I keep coming back to this week after week on your show, Hillary, but it's so important. The economy is ready to rock and roll. I mean, we've got businesses reopening, from coast to coast. People are getting back to work. We're starting to see people spend again, which is great. It's great. But, what could really disrupt this would be, a massive borrowing binge by Washington and pouring money into the economy. Because what's happening is wages are rising, Hillary, but guess what? Prices are rising faster than wages. And that means people's paychecks, what's the old saying from the 70s? My take home pay won't take me home. You know, I want to see that happen again.
Right. At 3.1%, inflation is higher than I think Jerome Powell expected to see. There's a Fed meeting July 15th and 16th. I don't think they're going to be doing anything at all then. There'll be Jackson Hole after that. I doubt we are going to see anything happen. The Fed needs, in my opinion,
on one point. So I think your listeners need to know that the Fed has an inflation target, right? You know this, and it's somewhere between 2 and 2.5%. So if we're at, I think you said 3.1% now, so that means that, you know, we're ahead of where the inflation target. So that means that Powell is going to have to drive that number back down to, you know, somewhere closer to 2 to 2.5%. And how are they going to do that, folks? I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see interest rates rise a little bit.
Okay, then right there, hold that thought, because we're going to have actionable advice, what you should do: real estate, buy, sell, hold, stock market. I am the Millionaire Maker with Steve Moore.